Hi again, Greg Bell of the News Tribune here at Blue Jean Stadium in Santa Clara. That's what happens when you have a pass rush. The Seahawks 5 sacks, a season high, 10 hits on quarterback Jimmy Garoppolo tonight. Jarran Reed, his first contribution since coming off the 6-game suspension at the start of the season. A sack and a half, a sack in the first quarter. Jadeveon Clowney was everywhere. This is why they traded with Houston for him in September. He had a sack. He had 4 quarterback hits, 3 tackles, a tackle for loss, a forced fumble. He scooped up a fumble that Reed caused in the first half when it was 10-0 San Francisco and it looked like the Seahawks were getting blown into the bay. Clowney returned that fumble 10 yards for a touchdown, and even though the Seahawks had been dominated, it was a 10-7 game. That changed everything. The pass rush changed everything. And they got to him, not always blitzing, although Trey Flowers had a rare corner blitz for a sack that Garoppolo ran into early in the game. The pressure as the game went on stayed with mainly the front 4. And Wagner and Kendricks and Wright at linebacker were able to stay in coverage, and the Seahawks had the numbers they wanted against the 49ers receivers, 7 on 4 or 5. That was different than in the previous game. So what changed? Well, talking to Clowney and talking to Bobby Wagner and the Seahawks in the locker room, defensive players after the game, they said they took it as a personal front, all the attention in the last 8 days on San Francisco's defensive front and how great they were and best in the league at pressuring quarterbacks, turning San Francisco into the number 1 pass defense in the league, second in scoring defense. They were tired of hearing about Bosa and Armstead and Buckner. And Clowney said, hey, if you're not competing, you should retire. And they took it as a competition was on tonight. And Clowney said the difference was the energy and the consistency from the first quarter on that the Seahawks brought it right away on the defensive front. Garoppolo, for all the pressuring he had, has to hold on to the ball better than he did. He was fumbling on plays that he has to secure the ball. But this game, let's face it, as thrilling as it was, 5 full periods, won by the Seahawks on the last kick, the last play of overtime. It was sloppy. 7 combined turnovers, 4 by the Seahawks. The first time winning a game with 4 turnovers since 1984. That's a bit ago. Russell Wilson won it at the end after Garoppolo threw 3 straight incompletions, and the 49ers ran only 14 seconds off the clock and late in overtime with under 2 minutes left in overtime when the Seahawks were out of timeouts. The Seahawks punted with 1:49 left in overtime, but the 49ers 3 incomplete passes later only had elapsed 14 seconds and gave Wilson, after the punt, 125 from his own 36-yard line to win the game, and he did. 3 straight completions, a 19-yard scramble up the middle when he had as much green grass open as there is behind me right now while people are tending to the field at 12:30 in the morning. 19-yard scramble got him in position for Myers' winning kick. Myers had 2 redemptive winning kicks, could have won the game at the end of regulation when he kicked it through with about 90 seconds left after last week's Tampa Bay debacle when he missed at the end of regulation and everybody in the Pacific Northwest wanted to throw him out of the region. Pete Carroll mentioned after that Tampa Bay game that the Seahawks eventually won in overtime how supportive his teammates were in the locker room for him and how Jason Myers, quote, our kicker. Well, that faith in him paid off, and that's, Carroll said tonight, why the Seahawks kept their faith in Myers, because they knew there would be another situation sooner than later that he would be in exactly like that, and he was tonight. He kicks it at the end of the 4th quarter. The Seahawks give it up defensively when KJ Wright and Bobby Wagner drop passes on what could have been game-saving, game-ending interceptions. 49ers tie it on the last play of regulation, 1 second left with a field goal. But then McLaughlin misses in overtime. It felt a little bit like the overtime tie in Arizona a couple years ago, 6-6, and it was headed to that tie until, as I said, the 49ers gave the Seahawks a gift of a 14-second drive. The big story after the game, Tyler Lockett. I was told by a league source with direct knowledge of the team's plans flying home this morning that Lockett is staying behind overnight in the Bay Area for observation and evaluation of a lower leg contusion. Pete Carroll described that the bleeding and the pooling of blood in the contusion was such that they're worried about compartmentalizing that affected area, and you don't want to fly with that, of course, with potential for clots and whatnot. So the Seahawks kept him on the ground here in the Bay Area overnight. presumably after that is under control, he'll fly home and join the team. They're on a bye, so now the Seahawks have 13 days until the next game, November 24th at Philadelphia. Carroll said he believes, because the Seahawks and the doctors got ahead of it tonight, and he's getting treated and observed tonight, that he will, Lockett, be okay for that Eagles game, but he'll have to wait and see. He didn't play the overtime, and it was noticeable that they didn't have Lockett. Wilson said it was very noticeable. Pete Carroll said we look different on offense in overtime without Lockett. Malik Turner with 2 big catches. Josh Gordon made his debut tonight with a couple key catches. And interestingly, Wilson went after Sherman, Richard Sherman, on the defense's left side with some key plays late in the game. I asked Wilson about that, and he said, hey, sometimes you just got to go for it. And he did, with both, especially with DK Metcalf late in regulation. Luke Wilson got a sprained ankle, unknown severity, but again, the bye week will help him as well. Jacob Hollister ended up being the only working tight end on the roster for the last 2.5 quarters. He ended up with a career-high 8 catches, a touchdown catch, and if Wilson had thrown the ball high enough at the end of at the first end of the first drive of overtime, it would have been a touchdown that ended the game there. Wilson rarely underthrown ball, intercepted. Stats said it was the first time in 25 years a quarterback threw an interception in the red zone in overtime, and yet the Seahawks can overcome all that to keep the NFC West a race. They are 1/2 game behind the 49ers, with San Francisco coming to Seattle in Week 17 for the final regular season game. That's how big tonight was. Seahawks lose that one. McLaughlin makes the kick in overtime. The Seahawks would be 3 games back in the loss column with 6 to play, and the race would basically be over. Now the Seahawks have a very real chance, if they can stay within a half game or less of the 49ers here, to have a home playoff game by winning the division. That's how big tonight was, and it all started and ended with the pass rush. All my coverage online at thenewstribune.com and on Twitter @GBellSeattle. As always, thanks for watching. Happy Veterans Day to all of those serving out there.